I love it. Thank you, Gideon. And you know what? We got the next one. So we're gonna bring in our next guest here. I got to bring Sue on stage. So Sue, this always takes a minute. So hopefully you're here with me. There we go. Can you hear us? Let us know you can hear us and see us. And then we will disappear. I'm going to do a little bit of an intro with you here, Gideon. I'm going to bounce you out. So Sue, welcome to the stage. Would you like a really long intro or would you like a short one? What would be your preference?
It's totally up to you.
All right.
How about a short one?
Okay. All right. Well, so you're the learning leader and president of a full service learning agency, Blue City Bull, CPLP, which I know is a not easy certification to get,
No.
and co-author of What Works in Talent Development, Designing Microlearning. But you're talking pilots, right? And we're not talking aviation, correct?
Well, maybe you'll just have to wait and find out.
We might, you know what?
Maybe they'll be both.
Who says? It's yes and. It's yes and. It might
Yes,
be both.
and
It goes from here. So with that, I need some more emojis welcoming Sue to the stage. And Sue, just so you know, you're part of the magic trick next time. So because I heard you want to be part of that, right?
I do. You know, I tried to practice a magic trick and I failed miserably. So I figure I'll handle the microlearning pilot and Gideon can handle the magic tricks. Stay in our own lanes.
He's good at me. He's good. So I can't wait to see what he's got planned for you. I'm going to just disappear quietly and then you are up and I will bump back in if you go too long because my job is to keep you on task. So keep an eye out.
That's fine with me. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me 1 second here. Well, hello, everybody. I'm super excited to be spending a little bit of time with you. When you can see my screen, give me some thumbs up emojis.
Good to go.
All right. Well, let's just dive right in. I thought I would do my introduction in pictures because pictures are always more fun, I think. I'm Sue Iannone. And actually, Chris, they changed the certification from CPLP to now CPTD. So basically, it's a certified professional in training and development. It was very difficult to get. It's sort of like cramming a master's degree in about 6 months. But it's basically from ATD and you learn about different competencies. And it was one of the best things I ever did. So if you're considering that as a learning professional, I highly recommend it. My day job, I'm the president and partner of Bull City Blue. Everyone always asks about the name. Why is it called Bull City? Well, we're based out of Durham, North Carolina, and Durham is also known as the Bull City. And so you can see our little bull there on the bottom right. And right next to it is BCL. So Bull City Blue is the life sciences vertical agency of BCL. And BCL services clients in every industry. In Bull City Blue, we focus on pharmaceuticals, biotech, medical device, diagnostic, healthcare IT, and whatnot. So I spend a lot of my time there. And as Chris mentioned, I co-authored a book with Carla Torgerson, who was one of the speakers at the last conference, and she had a different topic. I'll be talking about microlearning pilots today. And then some of the fun stuff. I love to travel, but certainly like everyone else, I've been stuck at home. I love to bake. I have a ginormous Bernedoodle who might make an appearance a little bit later. We'll see. I have 2 kids that are awesome, but also have learning disabilities. So it's interesting. That's helped me to be better at what I do in helping them to learn what they need to learn. And then on the far right, before I started Bull City Blue, I was in your shoes for many years. I first sold, I was a salesperson, management, but I think I've done every single job you could possibly think of in learning. I was an e-learning manager. I was a classroom trainer for many years. Learning leader, and I love to do speaking engagements like this and share some cool things. So enough about me. Tell me a little bit about you. So in the chat, if you could type in what your role is. Are you an instructional designer? Are you a developer? Are you a learning leader? Are you a jack of all trades, a fire putter outer? maybe all of the above. And yes, someone asked, my dog's name is Bubba. Bubba the Bernedoodle. All right. Thank you for, I see IDs, training coordinators, learning managers. Fantastic. Well, there's going to be something for everybody in this session. So let's move along. Okay. So 5 tips for a successful microlearning pilot is the topic. And we'll talk about how to identify when a microlearning pilot is needed, how to present your microlearning pilot to key stakeholders. I loved what Kara was talking about in terms of interacting with them. And we're going to touch on some of that too. And then some tips to design your pilot. So let's get some basic stuff out of the way. First, the favorite, topic of the past 5 years, the definition of microlearning. What is it? Well, this is my definition. It's just enough. It's a small piece of learning that people need to do something better in their job. And it can come in a lot of different formats and be delivered in a lot of different ways. But that is not the subject of this. We can just go from there and talk about, well, what is a microlearning pilot? So when you think about, it's funny that Chris brought this up in the beginning. My first thought was of an airline pilot, right? It conjures up these images of an airline pilot trying to fly a plane. And even though this is about microlearning, there's a bunch of parallels here to someone who's learning to fly a plane. So a microlearning pilot is just enough to test the viability of your microlearning. So think of it as an initial small-scale implementation that's used to prove the viability of your idea or a mini version of your project. You're testing the waters to determine if it's worthwhile to move forward on a larger scale. So when you think about an airline pilot, thankfully, people who want to become airline pilots aren't thrown immediately into a commercial airliner with passengers and allowed to fly, right? That could be very tragic. They spend hours and hours in training. They go through simulations so that they can learn in a low risk or no risk way. So why would we subject our learners to something new without testing it out first, especially if it's safety training? So a microlearning pilot can be really, really important. Okay, so why bother? Well, a pilot allows you to identify any issues with your microlearning before you roll it out on a larger scale. It can also help you to build trust when you think about your learners. Again, nobody likes to be forced to do things they don't want to do, including learning. And it helps you to build trust with the leaders in the organization. It's a way, of course, to test technology. That's another common thought when you think about a pilot. It's usually associated with technology, but it doesn't have to be. You can learn from your mistakes. And this is a big one. It reduces the perceived risk of going forward with your microlearning. So even though we, as learning professionals, have been hearing about, talking about microlearning for a few years now, our business partners or stakeholders are not necessarily experts in training and may not have a clue. So the other thing is failure is more accepted in a pilot, right? That is the beauty of a pilot, not just a microlearning pilot, any pilot, is that failure is more acceptable. So it allows you to proceed in a lower risk fashion. Okay, so what are some of the examples of, like, when would you do a microlearning pilot? Would you do it every single time you roll out microlearning? Probably not. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but there definitely are some specific situations that you want to consider. So one is if you are new to microlearning, this is new for you, you're trying to figure it out. So a pilot can be a great idea or way to proceed. What if your organization is new to microlearning? If they're used to really long training, maybe it's long and boring. Now you're going to come in with some exciting new microlearning stuff. A pilot is a great way to proceed. And again, the obvious, when you're rolling out new technology, or what if it's a new format for the learner? So let's say you're going to do some short videos and introduce that to a learner group. and they're just not used to using videos. I know that might sound hard to believe, but again, that's another situation where you might want to consider a pilot. And then my favorite, when resistance is expected. How many of you have tried to build a piece of learning, microlearning or other, and you ran into some resistance, whether it was the learners, their managers, your boss, senior leaders? I think we've all probably been in that situation at different points. So a microlearning pilot is a great way to move forward when you're expecting some resistance. It buys you some time to kind of like sell them on the idea as well. Okay, let's get right into the tips. Tip number 1, start small. So when we start small, we're talking about one user group or one small audience or one piece of microlearning. So if this is your first foray, or again, if all those situations that I mentioned before, if that's a concern, starting small is a great way to go. And by the way, I have some case studies at the end I'll share, so I'll be able to illustrate some of these tips in those scenarios. Okay, so an ideal pilot is a small user group with a performance need. Remember, just one performance need. When it's microlearning, you want to isolate it to one specific performance need. Okay, tip number 2, get permission. And I think Kara talked about this a little bit too. So it's getting permission from your senior leaders, the managers, but what about the learners? So something that fascinates me is all these years I've spent in the life science industry, the majority of training is mandatory. I think for obvious reasons, right? You have to be really well-versed in the drugs that doctors are going to be prescribing for patients or the devices that they're going to be using. So there's a lot of training, there's a lot of testing and a lot of certification. And frankly, the learner just doesn't have a choice. But depending on the industry or the company that you work for, that you're in, can it be optional? What a great idea to have your learners in a pilot opt in to the training. Now you're getting the most motivated learners who are going to participate. So getting permission is really important. Don't skip this step. And when you're thinking about your senior leaders, give me a thumbs up emoji if you've ever built a business case for any learning solution, not just microlearning. All right, I see some flying across. Awesome. So a business case is, I'm going to put my business hat on because frankly, I wear that more often than my training hat because you need it for the success of whatever you're doing. So in this case, think about the people that you need to sort of convince that you want to move forward with your microlearning pilot. And I'll just simplify it down to two sort of categories. The first one is you can present your business case as an informal conversation with some structure to it. So this might look like a one-on-one conversation over the phone or on a video chat or a hallway conversation with one of the people that you kind of need to get their buy-in with. But the structure part is don't just wing it, okay? Have a plan, make an outline, think about your key points. It's kind of like a sales call, right? You're trying to sell them on your idea of doing a pilot. If this is a larger microlearning initiative where you're going to pilot, it probably will require more thought and more planning and more people, frankly, that you have to get in front of. And it may mean that you'll have a formal meeting with some supporting visuals. So put together an awesome PowerPoint deck. You folks know how to design stuff, or find some graphics people, get them to help you to make it look really good and capture the key points that will help sort of convince them that a pilot is the way to go. And sometimes it might be a combination of these two things. So don't rush this step and don't skip it. It sounds simple, but it's really important. If you don't get the buy-in of the learner, the manager, and the senior leaders, good luck. Okay, tip number 3, find a champion. So who is that cheerleader who can help you make your microlearning pilot a success? You probably know who these people are in your organization. They could be someone in your intended audience. or recipient of the microlearning. It could be someone who's just a fan of the technology that you're using. And if you don't have a champion, who else could it be? It could be you. So be your own champion when all else fails. But someone's got to be the cheerleader and the champion when you do a pilot. And, hopefully they're articulate and they can communicate the value of the microlearning that you're going to do. Okay. Tip number 4. Have a plan. Again, it sounds so simple, but it can tend to be easy to skip this step too. Please don't skip it. It can be basic, but if you're considering a microlearning pilot, I would recommend, taking the time to put together your plan on what this is going to look like and how you intend to proceed. And if you would like a detailed version, we actually have lots of tools and templates in the back of our book. I'll provide these slides afterwards and I'll show you. There's a lot here. I'm not going to read it, but this is the microlearning pilot template that we actually included in the book. So it gives you the general topic areas that you should cover and then the questions you should be answering in each of those categories. So the first one is the background and business need. And it's something that I find a lot of learning professionals don't get it right, or they don't spend enough on this. So make sure you take the time to really understand. And I think Kara, the previous speaker, mentioned this too. You really need to understand why they need this, what's important, what is the specific performance need that you need to address. And then you can see the rest of the topics there. So they're pretty standard, I think. The opportunity, objective, solution. What is your pilot going to look like? Are there resources that you need to pull it off? Are there any risks that you might anticipate? Okay. And the last tip is to measure the impact. I used to call this the holy grail of training. When I was a classroom trainer, I would think, God, this is impossible. How am I ever going to measure stuff? The great thing about microlearning, I think, it's actually easier to measure because you're focused on one specific performance need, and it may be easier to sort of isolate the metrics. So type in the chat what kind of metrics you've used to measure your microlearning. Surveys, awesome, of course. Video views, yes. User data, right? So especially when it's technology based, it's awesome because you can get all kinds of metrics. Number of views, number of downloads, number of unique views, number of repetitive views. How many times did somebody watch it? Did they keep going back to it? Is there an increase in positive feedback? Is there an increase in the number of problems solved? So think about that need and what that's going to look like on the back end and see if you can capture that. How about test scores? I'll illustrate some of the metrics here in the case study, which is coming up next. Do you want to hear about it? I have 2 case studies. All right, thumbs up. Okay, case study number 1. So this is, we actually do a lot of work in global health, specifically in the vaccines area. And we built something called Immunization Academy, and it's in the public domain. You can go to it and check it out. And it's a microlearning video-based platform that we built for global health so that healthcare workers around the globe can educate themselves on anything you could think of related to vaccines, administration, data, all kinds of things. And this, what we learned was in Nigeria, they were having some challenges in this area. So the traditional training approaches limited the reach and impact, and there were some skills and knowledge gaps. And so Immunization Academy was used to deliver short, targeted microlearning videos where needed. So there were 2 performance needs actually in 2 different audiences, and you can see them there. So the pilot was, you can see, I'm not going to read through all this because I know we're short on time, but we identified the need in the audience, and the key was to create a personalized training approach to target and remediate each of these individual gaps. and we defined measurement metrics. So as I go through this, think about the different tips that I shared, because you can kind of tick them all off. The solution was something called IA Score Nigeria. So it was a custom interactive tool that had all kinds of cool stuff in it, including pre and post assessments. There was a dashboard for managers. It was offered in English and Hausa, which is a native language. So learners could choose the language that they were most comfortable with. And it also included communication tools for managers. And so the way it was implemented is we identified 2 geographies, not the entire country of Nigeria. It was 2 states. So there's your small group. There was a pre-test. Learning plans were assigned. They watched the videos that they needed to, and then a post-test and a certificate. And the measurement was the tests, right? So we looked at pre and post assessment scores. Then there were manager evaluations. They had a checklist that they went around to make sure. And the results were everybody did better. I'm oversimplifying here for time. And they measurably improved their skills and knowledge. So this is a great example of a successful pilot that when you put your plan together and follow all the key pieces, you can be successful. And what's really cool about this is in the first year, there were 37,000 users that watched these videos. They were played and watched more than 3,000 times. And it was perfect because it was great timing during the pandemic where people couldn't go to live training. So they were able to close these gaps in Nigeria. And I'm going to skip this last case study because I know we're out of time, but it'll be in the slides. Here are the 5 tips. I hope you found this helpful, and the references will be made available to you too.
And they've been sharing the links in the comments along the way, Sue. So you are in great shape. And I think one of the things that you brought up with this, with the whole pilot, is that I'm curious on. Here's one of my questions, and for those of you still watching, be sure to ask questions. I'll try and bring some up here because we have a few minutes for Q&A. One of the challenges, and I continue pushing my teams on this, is that with a pilot, sometimes we have this tendency to over-engineer it. Right, we're trying to over-engineer. It's like it's got to be perfect, and we got to figure all this out. And how do we get all the right tools in place and everything before we run the pilot? Versus, let's just experiment and know that not all the eggs are going to hatch. Like some things we try are gonna face plant. So I'm really curious on your end. How do you help people work through that?
Because that's a great point.
That is a tough thing for folks who have been, and in many cases have been curb stomped because I tried something and I got yelled at. And so to be like, well, no, but this is different. It's a pilot. It's an experiment.
I call everything a pilot because it gives me permission to fail. If your pilot is a failure, it's still a success. That's what I'd like to say. And but it is tough because we do want things to be perfect. We don't like to put anything out there for our learners that is slightly off. But the thing is, if you communicate around your pilot, in other words, communicate beforehand, be crystal clear with the learners. This is a pilot. We want your feedback. And then people are like, oh, sure, I'll tell you exactly what I think. Okay. And then if it's good feedback, awesome. And if it's not good, that's okay too. It just means you have to course correct. And remember, if you do this right, you're using it with a small group or in a confined, isolated way, you're not putting it out there to your entire audience of learners. Yeah. So you're trying it with a small sort of trusted group, especially if you've allowed them to opt in. So that's just something we have to keep messaging to our team members too, is to say, it's a pilot. Failure is okay. And it's not really failure. Sometimes it's just something that needs to be adjusted. Think alpha, beta, right? In technology, there's a reason, right? We do alpha and beta, and then we go live because it gives us the opportunity to catch those things that maybe didn't quite work right.
Well, I think that's such a great point, especially the expectation setting, I think is one of the things I really hung on to with that, is that setting those expectations and communicating that up. I know when my teams are trying to do this, it's super helpful for me. When they're like, hey, we want to run this, but it is, whether you call it a pilot, an MVP, whatever your term for it is to make sure you socialize that up. Because I know for me, it's super helpful because I'll go into the exec meetings and say, we don't know if this is going to work. And it helps me set expectations. So on the business end, they don't end up going into it thinking like, well, this is going to solve all the problems. And it's like, well, no, we never said that it would. We're trying to figure out if we're solving a problem. And I think that's really important. And sometimes we can skip that step and just jump from A to Z. So
well, that's why that background and business need is really important.
yes.
You have to anchor to it. It's the reason you're doing the pilot. There's a need. And if you don't capture it and you don't communicate it when things starting to go, when those conversations shift to other things or they want to do more, you have to bring them right back to that, main objective and that what was the original intent of doing your pilot. So that way the expectations stay aligned all the way through.
Well, and be okay with asking for help. I tell my teams all the time, like there's some times where a big title coming in saying something carries more weight. And I know it's hard sometimes when you're on the front lines doing it, that scope creep, those leaders that are like, no, change this or do this. Ask for help and say, look, they're steering me over here. Can you help set expectations? Can you help reinforce this for me? Because you got a good leader, they should be like, absolutely. Like, let's knock this out.
Well, Kara mentioned that in her session, like sometimes it's hard as an individual contributor to like be on that front line. And I've led many learning teams over the years of all different sizes. And I was always very clear, especially with my senior managers who had independent individual contributors reporting to them. I'm like, you have to go on the front line and duke it out with the senior leader. Don't let the trainer do it. Because just because of the role, it's part of your role as a leader. You've got to have your team's back, and you're typically the leader can go toe to toe with another senior leader. It's a peer-to-peer discussion where you call them the carpet and you say, hey, and that's being a good consultant, right? And then save your people.
All right. Well, let's give some emojis, folks, for Sue and that presentation on how to run a pilot, things to think about. Hopefully you took something from that. You should. I would encourage everyone, the more experimentation you can do, the better. That really is a great way to learn from it. And again, you don't need to solve the world's problems. So thank you, Sue, for being here. Couple quick things. Sue, stay on because you're part of the magic for this one.
Oh, I'm so excited.
You're part of it. We also have to draw for another Oculus 2. So I got to spin the wheel of incredible prizes. And if you're here, you got to tell me in the comments if your name comes up. I'm not going to put my VR headset on because then I won't see anything. So I'm going to bring that on stage. The other thing, though, I already talked to Ina about this. If you win, stick around because at the end, I'm going to bring you on stage and you get to just like hang out. I mean, maybe you'll be like, no, I have no desire. I have no desire to do that. Please don't do that. And then you can just decline when I ask you to come on stage. But otherwise, you can. So let me spin the wheel here. Let's see what name we come up with. Here we go. No whammies, no whammies, no whammies. Spin the wheel. All right. Laura, are you here? Let's see.
There she is.
This is awesome. Wow, first time. Last time we had to do a couple spins.
See you in the metaverse, Laura.
Congratulations, Laura. You are our number 2 winner. Stick around because you're going to come hang out on stage at the end. Congratulations on that. With that, Gideon, let's see. I'm gonna pin you to the screen. Pin you, not literally. There we go.
Like with a tack?
Yeah, like with a tack. He's very tacky. So let's see. What magic do you have?
All right, let's do some magician for you.
I'm so excited.
I'd love for you to help me out if it's all right.
Sure.
I don't know if you do you happen to have a stack of about 50 random photos of random objects on your Sue? Do you happen to have those with you? If you don't, it's okay. We'll use mine.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
So I think I know what happened here. I forgot to put a microphone on that scene on OBS, so we'll just use this. You can see this fine, right?
This is like an awkward silence. What's happening right now?
Classic. All right, let me move this here real quick. Okay. I had it all fancy with the green screen for you, but never mind. What? Green screen? Me? Never. Okay. So we have a bunch of tickets here with random photos. We have a road, a star. We have all kinds of things, okay? And you're going to make a few decisions. I'm going to test your intuition. Do you have a good intuition, Sue?
I think so.
I knew you were going to say that. My intuition said that you're going to have a good intuition. So I'm going to shuffle it. But I don't want you to see and make out what is here. And by the way, this is not a recording. You can see this is live. This is me here. So we're going to shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. And whenever you want, I'm going to start removing cards like this. We're going to test your intuition. Wherever you want, you're going to tell me to stop. And wherever stop me, it's going to tell me something about your intuition.
Stop.
Okay, do you want this one, the one in my hand, or the one on the table?
The one on the table, please.
The one on the
Oh,
table.
she's
So this one
shaking
is
it
going
up.
that,
I
and
like
you
this.
are going here to the side. And we're going to do this very, very slowly so you can see. And I think you have a very good intuition because you told me to stop on a very specific location, exactly on the picture of a stop sign, which is a very, very good intuition. You even got music. Yeah, we're going to stop the music. I don't think we paid royalties for that. Anyway, so, but I want to see, maybe that was a fluke. Maybe it was luck. Maybe it was luck. It might be. I'll give you more credit than that, but I want to test it because
I want to see all the cards now.
oh, don't you? But that would be cheating, and only I'm allowed to cheat. There's only room for one cheater in
Okay.
my show. But in a second, you will see that they are indeed all different. And I want you to stop me one more time to see if you can do it again.
Stop.
Okay, we're good. You know what? I'll give you another shot. Another shot. We're gonna give you. Tell me when to stop.
Stop.
You know what? You're really, really cool. I really want you to get it again because it gets harder and harder. So I'll give you one more shot if that's all right.
Stop.
All right, there we go. And you know what? I really, really one more, one last one. I swear this is the last one.
Stop.
Okay, there we go. Thank goodness. That was a short one. Thanks. Let's see if you got me to stop on the stop one last time. So here you stopped me on a trumpet, which is not the stop sign, but it's very close because my neighbor is also playing the trumpet. And every time he's starting to practice, I'm saying, oh, please stop, please stop. So maybe this is your intuition about my noisy neighbor. But I don't know. That's just me. Let's see what else you have. You have the airplane. You have the airplane, which is not to stop. But if you go it like this, it's going into the ground, and when he reaches the ground, he's going to stop. Okay. So I don't know about that. Let's see here. You got the baseball. It's not a short, but it's a shortstop. Huh? Shortstop. There you go, shortstop. And of course, here it's not. It's a flamengo, which are going endangered, and we must stop the endangerment of the. You're not buying any of this, are you? Okay, so yeah, but you see, sometimes things are not as they seem, and I'll explain why. Because you can look at these photos at a different way, and if you look at the flamengo, it's looking like an S. And if you're looking at the plane, it's looking like the T. This is the O, this is the P, and you stop me here, and you stop me here, you stop me here, you stop me so many times. This is a stop, and I think I'm gonna have to stop the trick here because it's too much for me.
Nicely done, Gideon. Sue, was it worth sticking around for?
Absolutely. Thank you for allowing me to participate.
All right. Well, thank you, Sue. Thank you, Gideon. He's coming back, so don't go anywhere, folks. Do not go anywhere because we have more magic to come. But before we do,